Welcome back, everyone, to Tech Talk, the officially unofficial Transformers TCG podcast. I'm joined, as always, by Scott of VectorSigma.info, and we're well in the throes of that season, Scott. It took me an inordinate amount of time to try and collect everything, make sure the overlay has everything, and I'm sure I missed or forgot something.
No, I'm sure you're good. There aren't that many this time.
Yeah, this time. We'll see. And it actually, I guess, given that we're starting, or I don't know if it is actually earlier, I'd have to go back and look at the actual timestamps from the previous releases. It feels like the release season is starting sooner, so it'll maybe be more bite-sized chunks instead of like trying to inhale a whole meal.
Yeah, probably. Given the runway, I would agree.
Yeah, we'll see how it shapes out. I'm sure there will be at least one show where it's like 30 cards, because that seems to always happen, or it feels like always. But anyway, before we dive into the actual cards, there was another recent announcement, and that was actually events for Pax East. So I went over to the Pastime site, because it got tweeted out and posted on all the various social media by both Pastimes and the official Transformers TCG accounts, and got some screenshots of the stuff that's out there. It's a very similar format, or at least as I understood it, where it's basically if you go undefeated in one of the qualifiers, you then qualify for Championship Sunday, and then there's uncut sheets and Energon editions and boxes and other cool stuff to win. I think becoming the standard format for non-unplugged PAX events. So I don't really have a whole lot new to add. What about you, Scott?
So I think the difference is that at PAX South, every event was 4 rounds, regardless of how many players showed up. Whereas now this is like only 3 rounds. I think of less than, I forget what the number is.
If it's 4 to, yeah, I'm looking at it now. If it's 4 to 16, okay, it'll be 3 rounds, and 4 rounds if it's 17 and over.
Yeah, so that's the big difference, is they cut around if there's less players, which they didn't do last time. So there's actually more qualifiers because of that. So you can play in more of them. So there's that aspect of it. So that's positive. I mean, they only, and I think they're giving out uncut sheets again. They're giving out a decent amount of product again. The only downside is just like, that there's a cost to get into PAX East.
Oh boy, yes there is.
It's high. And the other issue is like a lot of the badges have already sold out because of when it was announced. So like a lot of people that were going probably already knew they were going to begin with.
Right.
So I wouldn't really worry too much about the turnout. Like, I mean, it is what it is. I don't think that, I mean, I'm on record, I've said it before, but like, I don't think that the PAX events, even PAX South, being the smallest of the non-unplugged ones, I just don't think that they're set up well for non-Magic TCGs. I don't know how the other TCGs do there, but I just think that they're video game conventions. So the cost to get in is basically like to try beta versions of video games and play in big video game tournaments and things like that. So, obviously Magic will always draw what it draws. So like, it's easy to just have Transformers come along for the ride, but I wouldn't worry too much about it like as a major thing, because I just think it's prohibitive for players to get in.
Yeah, so. I mean, we've talked in the past about Gen Con being an expensive convention to get to, especially depending on what part of the country you're from, or if you're coming from something international. This sort of takes it to another level. Where it's just, oh boy, yeah, it's that is could be your one big trip. And to your point, if people weren't planning to attend to begin with, it's certainly not for me an impulse decision to go, oh yeah, well, you know what, I have a free weekend, I'll just I'll jump on a plane and swing on down. Or up, I guess. It's just, that's not in the cards, no pun intended.
Yeah, the good thing I can say is that, like, I mean, if you do live in like I assume Seattle area, wherever PAX Prime, PAX West is, you can pretty much assume even now that there's going to be something there. So like,
absolutely,
planning if that's the case. So.
Yeah, that is something that we're definitely at that point in the cycle where we've seen this enough times where we could say, yeah, that's coming up. There's going to be something, and we have the rough idea with, as you mentioned earlier, minor tweaks as far as structure changes, but you basically know what you're getting yourself into. And it's just a matter of, okay, can you swing it for some of these both larger and potentially cost prohibitive conventions?
Yep.
So I just wanted to throw that out there because it was more recent news. But I think I'm going to go out on a limb and assume what everybody's excited to hear us talk about and to talk about themselves are the new reveals that have come in the last week. We've gotten quite a bit, a smattering across the new mechanics. And there's some definitely cool stuff, including things that we did have a chance to talk to Drew about already. That did go live at the calendar day of the recording. So by the time you listen to this afterwards, you probably already listened to it, but we'll rehash other things since we've had a little more time to digest. But we're going to start actually in reverse order, sort of. Again, this is a little all over the place for how these are categorized, but I wanted to start with Jurassic Punch, which Drew had mentioned on multiple occasions was his favorite card, as in the title. And I am pretty much in agreement with him. The card name is amazing. I have to appreciate it on this one.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting.
So Jurassic Punch is Volcanicus's, specifically Volcanicus Fiery Champion's stratagem. It's 1 star. When your Volcanicus Fiery Champion attacks an enemy that has fewer stars than him, your Volcanicus gets bold until the end of battle equal to the star difference. So, Scott, I think you said it offline. This is basically bolt, turn your deck over.
Yeah. Volcanicus costs 39, I believe, right?
Sure. I honestly have no idea.
77889, so I think that's 39. Yeah.
Sure. None of them. Doesn't one of them change stars? I don't think it's him, but anyway, continue.
It's hard to see on the app because like the 5 and the 10 are like so small, but I'm pretty sure it's 39 when you add them all up.
Okay.
So you're getting bold, like even if you go against, literally if you go against Metroplex, you're still getting bold 14. So
yeah, I think we were talking about it offline, and maybe Optimus Maximus has more stars. I don't know.
I think he does because it's 7 times 5 plus 11. So,
but as
40,
one of the
he doesn't. It's 46, I think.
Interesting. Okay. So, as one of the patrons put it in response, though, it's another combiner that Optimus Maximus almost never combines. So, it's probably a scenario that you're not going to have to worry about.
No.
Unfortunately, you may not have to worry about the other part of the scenario all that much. To me, I mean, it does address some concerns, obviously, of the Volcanicus strategy with this stratagem. That is, okay, you're going to brutally slaughter something when you connect with this, or presumably you will. If you're orange, obviously with Bolt 39, unless they overheat you or something, which would be hysterical.
Yes.
That would, I think I might literally fall out of my chair at that if I saw that happen. But so you're just gonna demolish something with the bold, or if you lean into blue, and this is going to segue into the concern. If you're a blue deck, you run inverted or thermal weaponry or something, because bold 39 with thermal weaponry would also be hilarious. Problem is it's the reason you'd be blue is because these guys are sort of fragile, especially in the more as health pools have grown, they seem much more puny than they would have otherwise, I think. The parts, I mean.
I mean, their mid-range characters are probably a little understated for their cost, given the combiner ability, I would say. But, so I think, so this operates similar, in my opinion, to the Cosmos stratagem, where Cosmos had 2 problems. It was getting the ability off and then making sure you're actually KOing a character that mattered.
Yep.
And to me, Volcanicus had 2 problems, combining and his ability, like when the first time he attacked or something, and the number of oranges that you flipped, it didn't fit well with the ability that it wasn't a synergistic ability with the ability to actually combine, because it forced you to lean into an orange deck and then to get the ability off. But then, like, how are you going to survive to actually combine? So, like, it wasn't realistic to actually assume that you could do all these things, similar to the way Cosmos was without his stratagem. Cosmos' stratagem addressed one of the 2 parts, and in my opinion, the Volcanicus stratagem impacts positively with one of the two parts, which is when you become Volcanicus, you should be KOing a guy every single time you attack.
Yep.
So I do think what this allows you to do is build a heavier blue deck that has a smattering of oranges here and there, probably, just because, again, like we said, you're going to
as long as they're not in your hand, like
right.
you're getting
exactly,
them.
exactly. Like I mean, it should not be an issue whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
But
go ahead.
there's a lot of interesting ways you can go about it. And again, I think this is similar to Cosmos. And what I like about this is, and to be honest with you, I think this is basically what Wizards is trying to do in terms of, like, quote, combo decks. Like, they're trying to make it so you do fight on a different axis. And I think what this deck allows you to do is, like, you can literally play no weapons in your deck because all you care about is, like, I think he's 6 to start with. I don't remember.
6 base attack, you mean?
Yeah.
That sounds right.
Yeah, I think he's like 6 or 7 base attack.
I'm going to check it.
With.
Okay. Go ahead.
And then obviously he would, for every orange that's not in your hand, like, you would pretty much just get that much more attack. So, like, if you literally played a smattering of oranges that was, like, 6 or 7 in your deck and the rest was all blues or blanks and things like that, that's how much damage you would do. Like, you would pretty much know that I'm attacking for, like, 13 or 16 or something like that. Like, you can play, like, a token Nobles Blaster, to be honest with you, and, like, slap that on Volcanicus, and, like, everything else could just be what's it called, like a dual pip or anything like to do with that. And, like, in my opinion, the way you build the deck is, like, you're just all about combining. So, like, obviously you're playing 3 axial functions, which the deck was anyway.
Yeah, of course.
But, like, you're literally just, like, whatever it takes to keep Grimlock alive. So, like, all these, like, stealth effects, all these brave effects, all these other things that are literally just preventing as much damage as possible, so that, like, there may be situations where, like, especially against aggro, where, like, you're not going to be able to attack 3 times, which is what you would need to do to get the sludge combo off. You might only be able to actually get the 2 attacks in, and obviously, because you're literally all in on becoming Volcanicus, like, that's all you're going to have the ability to do, which is totally fine. Because I just don't think like, you can do no damage to your opponent. It does not matter, because every single time you attack, you will be KOing, like, the smaller characters. I'm not saying you're going to KO, like, a Galaxy Prime in, like, one shot, but, like, I think you can certainly build a deck in a way where you're doing
it's
damage.
bold 30 something or whatever. Like, it's
bold,
not.
What would it be?
I already forgot what you say. He's how
39.
many stars?
He's 39.
He's 39 stars.
It's bold 18. So you're flipping 20 cards. I assume you're playing some number of white. So, like, let's just say you're flipping, like, 22 cards.
Like, yeah.
So, I mean, but that's not like, you can't. I don't think you can build the deck to where you're doing, like, 31 damage. I think you have to build the deck to where you're doing, like, 14 or something like that, or, like, like, guaranteed, right? Because, again, like, you're flipping your whole deck the entire time. So I do think it's actually an interesting build. I'm not sure how it'll be at, like, the highest competitive levels, of course, but, like, I do think that, like, this gives the Volcanicus Dinobot deck, like, a huge amount of, like, buff, because I think it had 2 major problems, and now, like, you've completely eliminated one, and what that allows you to do is make the other one easier, because if you're playing a mostly blue deck, then it makes it easier to have your guys survive to combine, especially with a guy like Slug, who starts with 3 defense and has that white ability. So I think that, like, if you're playing a mostly blue deck, you can survive longer and possibly combine, and then you turn yourself, like, you can play one inverted if you want and literally just kill everybody in one shot, and then you're literally doing, like, 30 damage every single time you attack. But, like, you can do that also. I mean, it's only 1 card you have to play in your deck, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. So that's a possibility as well.
Absolutely. I mean, there's other cute things that you could do, like Steamroll, where it's okay. That's you're clearly, you just brutalize somebody and go, well, I guess it all goes somewhere else. And since you're flipping so many cards, presumably you can choose your targets appropriately and definitely shrink the game length. Offhand, I don't know how many either orange blues or orange whatevers, those dual pips, or the even double oranges, so that you can maximize the amount of oranges without truly negatively impacting the build. But there's clearly potential there. And Chuck is saying in chat as a joke, you could always daring escape off of that if you can find some way to play the escape while everything's on the stack. I guess that is a chance.
No, I do think you. I mean, I think your point about steamroll might be a way that, and doing a bunch of different things that it might play like a combo deck. Like you might piece for tyranny away one of the guys just so you get like an extra turn to combine.
And just like seize the momentum back, because then if you KO two guys, it's like, all right, you still have to get through this gigantic dude with presumably your one character left.
Yeah. So I think it'll be an interesting build. I think that it definitely solved one of the problems, which was sometimes you just combine and still couldn't KO anybody. So
yeah, that's kind of a problem when you invest that much effort.
Yep.
So I do appreciate also the way they crop the art, because it definitely looks like Volcanicus is, just winding up to deliver that Jurassic punch, which is awesome. Any other thoughts on this before we move on, Scott?
No, I mean, paying the star is no big deal. You basically just, instead of getting the sludge from Rise of the Combiners, you basically just have to play Swoop or Snarl. So that's the only difference. So
yeah, you have a minor variation in what your team composition might be, but yeah.
The star is available to the team, whereas like in our interview with Drew, like he said, the 25-star teams will not be getting a stratagem, but this is one that doesn't go by that rule. So like,
exactly.
It was a good use of the card to allow it to be with the combiners.
Yep. So we'll move on from Jurassic Punch, and we'll move on to Swap Heads. So Swap Heads is another stratagem. It is a Titan Master stratagem. Once per game, when you flip one of your characters that has a character on it in head mode, you may swap that head with one of your other character's heads. When you do flip this being the stratagem, and it's 1 star. We do have, and I don't think we've actually said it on here at all yet, Scott, now that I'm saying this out loud. Our usual hot take section is appearing on the site, vectorsigma.info, and this was included in it. This is a weird one to evaluate, especially given the context that, well, as of now, we have 3 headmasters, Titan Masters, to look at, and 2 bodies. So there haven't really been, or there isn't enough information to truly evaluate this, but do you feel there's a lot of potential in this, Scott?
Potential, yes. And this will actually be covered on our card of the day quote tomorrow as we're recording. So if you're listening live, I
wasn't sure if it was up, so I was being very vague.
Yeah, it's going up tomorrow. I already have it ready to go. Myself, you, and Palmer did this one. We're not, all 5 of us aren't going to be doing all of them because it just became too cumbersome. So
right.
It's difficult to evaluate because how do I explain? Like I tried to explain it in writing and it was tough, but like no pun intended. Like you're not always going to like. There's not always a situation where like, okay, I'm now defending. Okay, I'm now attacking. Like after you attack, you're defending.
Yep.
So
yeah, there's no window.
So having tough is just as valuable, quote, when attacking because you're going to be attacked. If that makes any sense.
Right.
As like the bold would be, and again, like those are the ones we've seen so far, other than a static defensive buff, which we could just assume is like the same argument there. So I'm not really sure what kind of window there is for this card to matter, if that makes any sense.
Well, there's 2 scenarios that I thought of. One is the obvious, if there's a body/head that cares when it's reattached, obviously.
Sure. Of course.
But that would only be, well, once a game, unless it had some weird wording to allow, like, it attaches, quote unquote, at the start of the game, so then it does a minor thing. The other scenario I was thinking is if the heads were way swingy. So I couldn't think of a good way to illustrate it, and we're going to talk about the bold one in a little while, but let's say it had bold 5. Then you would want to be able to get extra usage out of it by swapping it to another guy, because presumably there would be some drawback. The body is really bad. The head confers some kind of negative bonus or debuff or whatever. So you can assume that the character it's originally on is not going to make it to another swing. So you want to move it somewhere else to get extra value out of it. That being said, I don't know if that's worth a star right now. I mean, the heads that we've seen, to your point, it kind of needs to be there when it needs to be there. So the only time, I guess, is offensive-oriented heads so that you can do it once, swap them, do it again.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I just don't... Again, it's tough to talk about this one right now, and I'm sure we'll bring it back up as we get more Titan Masters released. But right now, it's confusing. Now, that being said, when we spoke with Drew, he did indicate that there's going to be more Titan Master heads than there are bodies. So I assume there are going to be at least a few that are not just straight stats or keyword. They kind of have to be simple because of the way the physical gameplay works, as in like where the cards are on the table, but maybe not. It's a very open-ended thing at this stage.
Yeah, I agree. This is the most difficult card, in my opinion, to evaluate.
Mm-hmm.
Right this second. Yeah.
Yeah, I hate to punt this one, but I think we almost have to by virtue of way the text is.
Yeah.
So we'll leave swap heads alone for now. Again, I'm confident we'll revisit it as more of the Titan Masters are released. But I actually want to move on to one of the cards that was recently revealed, and also, I mean, they all recently revealed, but created kind of a stir, and that is Tidal Wave. So he is the organized play promo for this set. And there's just like a million things that he does. So I do have it rotating up on the screen. I guess the simplest way is I'll just name one of the parts unless you want to start with the combined mode and work backwards, Scott. Uh-oh, we may have lost him.
I was just on mute.
Okay. That's fine.
No, I would just run through them. I mean, like,
okay.
I think it's going to be played as a team, so
yeah,
I would go from that perspective.
So there are, and we'll get into the implications, that there is a potential that it's not going to be a team, but we'll start with the battleship mode for Tidal Wave. So they're all boats. This one is range. He's 410-1, he's 8 stars, and he has stealth. When your second character is KO'd this game, and you had Tidal Wave Dark Fleet, the aircraft carrier, Tidal Wave Dark Fleet, the transport, on your starting team, combine them with this into Tidal Wave Dark Fleet, and that we'll get to the combiner mode. This is the obligatory member of the team just to give you the ability to combine. The fact that he has stealth and 10 health is reasonable, although the 1 defense is obviously not fantastic. It's just he's not going to be the first guy attacking. But to your point, Scott, I don't anticipate that this guy's going to make an appearance outside the team for obvious reasons.
No, obviously.
Is there anything outside of the obvious combiner thing, and we'll get to the body, the combined form in a moment, but anything special about this guy that you want to point out?
If you want to combine, like, you're going to be able to because of his inborn stealth. So, like, I mean, and you'll probably be able to combine with a decent amount of quote hit points because, again, this guy has stealth. So,
right.
And as we'll get to the other ones, they don't really care about being KO'd. So,
absolutely, yeah, he's range, which is notable. I mean, the other two are specialists, but that getting the traits may not be a hard thing to do, which we'll get to in a second. Like you said, he because of the stealth, I was very surprised to see that on there, but I mean, it makes sense to preserve the body. I'm very curious to see this guy as a whole, but we'll dive into the other parts. So the next one up, we'll look at the transport. So also a boat specialist, 053, 8 stars. This starts the game with a car, truck, or tank under it that has 4 stars or fewer. When this attacks, combines, or is KO'd, deploy the character from under this onto the battlefield in alt mode. If this is attacking, you get an extra attack this turn, but only with the deployed character. Now, it's not a forced attack, right?
No, it wouldn't be.
So you could just choose. I mean, unless you had to attack, like they're tapped out. Like you could just choose to bank the guy.
Yeah, which is what I would imagine you should probably do more of.
That's what I'm thinking.
I forgot that ability. I forgot that ability didn't happen, to be honest with you. So
the extra attack, you mean?
Yeah, I mean that's interesting.
I did as well until I read it, and I'm like, So, yeah. I mean, the more, well, maybe not more interesting, because that is an interesting piece, is that the whole deployment mechanic. And as you said, at 5 health, 3 defense, so effective 8 health, barring blue flips or whatever else, he's relatively fragile, presumably whatever 4-star character you're putting under there, and it doesn't care which faction is also going to be fragile. It's starting to make sense how easy, or seemingly easy, it's going to be to get to tidal wave the combined mode with these guys.
Yeah, what I also like about it is that it's also, I think this is going to be one of the first opportunities we actually have, if you don't attack with the character, to actually use Micromasters for their actual Micromaster ability.
Yeah,
because you're just getting extra characters, so they're not costing you like your team. They're just like, here you go, here's a leap into battle, or here's a actually I don't know if that one leap into battle, but like here's a pep talk, here's a whatever else they have.
And it is notable that, you won't be able to get the Lords, and then, like you said, some of them might edge it out because they're 5 stars, so it does constrict it, but obviously over time we're going to be getting more 4-star characters that will help fill it out. And at worst, okay, I just pick the smallest one and run them out there so that I can combine. No harm, no foul sort of thing. It's an incredibly interesting mechanic to me because the entire thing messes with turn sequencing, and we talked about this on other review shows, I guess, spoiler shows, where I always feel myself drawn to these cards that can potentially influence how combat wheels end up shaping out. Mm-hmm. Without necessarily just being, all right, I'm a big guy, I punch your guy really hard, eliminate him, so that means there isn't an attack coming back. This is, extra characters are coming out, those characters don't count against your star limit, so you can potentially do other weird stuff. This could get really wild. And now it's bothering me because I can't think of a 4-star truck. I mean, there's the Autobot ones. There are no... Only Motormaster, I think, is a Decepticon truck right now.
Yeah, it's all this is all the patrol characters, like
absolutely.
Other than like,
the Metroplex guys,
Metroplex Tripticon guys,
Which I did check. Unfortunately, Slammer does require Metroplex, which I'm sure was intentional.
And they all, and like the Tripticon ones, like their revenge abilities require you to have Tripticon in play.
Which it makes sense. It's Dan's saying you have to attack with the deployed character in chat, which I guess makes sense. Well, he's saying you do, but it says the actual card text is you get an extra attack this turn, but only with the deployed character.
Oh.
So
if there's no May, then I guess you...
As I'm rereading it for the however manyth time, it does make sense that it would be required. I do get Dan's point about you wouldn't be able to flip them, but we were originally for the Micromaster, we were operating under the assumption that you would, do it next turn. But that may not be the case, and what are you going to do? You can't have everything.
No. I think the way you play it is basically you choose this one or the other one, and I would assume it's this one if you're a blue deck, or the other one if you're an orange deck, and mostly orange or mostly blue, and you basically allow this guy to get out the other guy, get out your deployer, like the deployer to get out the 4-star guy, and then you basically do as best as possible to keep the other 2 boats like at as much health as possible. So if that, again, I'm going to lean more into like the brave and stealth and those kinds of effects. Like if you're going to like you're trying to basically get to the combiner mode with as much health as possible. So
absolutely,
that's where I would go. I would get out a guy and then basically have the Micromasters or whatever the 4-star guys are be your complete sacrificial lambs, because you can lose both of those guys and you can still combine.
Yep. Yeah, as long as you're not losing that last guy, that the the battleship.
Yep.
Um,
So
moving from there, we have the third piece of this, and that's Tidal Wave, the aircraft carrier, who is also a specialist. 8 stars like the others. A 162. This guy starts the game with a plane, helicopter that is 4 stars or lower underneath it. And he has the same clause where when he attacks, combines, or is KO'd, you deploy the character from underneath. And if it's attacking, you get an extra attack this turn with the deployed character. Just repeat the same sort of conversation, but obviously you have a different set of characters that are going to be available to you with this guy.
yeah, at this point, I don't think it matters. Other than if one of them has a Micromaster ability that you want to be able to use, I guess at this point, like on the wheel, I guess. So
yeah, the only advantage is or maybe not only advantage, but if I'm playing against this, because they're going to try and combine, you probably want to try and take down the parts. So the traits provided by the deployed characters is going to be relevant. Now, Tidal Wave himself, when we talk about the combined form, is ranged, but maybe you want access to melee specialist or whatever for some reason, or just the redundant ranged, and therefore you can stick javelins on other guys. It is going to be an interesting decision point. I'm sure people will figure out if you want to do it as a blue deck, you want to do it as an orange deck, or you want to do this other thing, that there will be better or worse characters. But right now there is a plethora of options. And like Dan's saying in chat, that of course we're going to get more 4 stars. So it's only going to grow. It's also, so before we get to the combined form in general, this guy obviously was incredibly exciting to me. He also, I wanted to go look for the toy, but I couldn't find him in time. That as an aside, but to me,
did you own or
yeah, I have the aircraft carrier version.
One?
Yeah,
the Armada one.
Okay. I don't think it was from Armada. It had to have been, I guess, but
yeah,
because I definitely had that toy. And it's definitely in a box somewhere. But anyway, digression aside, one of the things that excited me, and I keep waffling back and forth, is that initially I go, wow, this is an awesome aggro guy. You have 1 million guys, and then you combine into a big one, and you want your guys to get KO'd, so reckless charges and one-shell stands and things like that only help you. That being said, we're also talking about a character that's a 0.53 and a 1.62. So... Right. Maybe they need some help. I'm not sure.
The other guys are basically 3 something.
Right. And because they're not going to have the appropriate lord, so you can't stuff Tailwind on one of these guys.
Right.
They are going to be what they are. So you're not going to get the innate buff by playing one of the patrols or something. I'd have to go back and see if there's, one that would be the clear, far and away winner for this is my default 4-star aggro guy. I don't think I've asked myself that question very often.
I think it's Night Flight on the plane helicopter mode.
Probably. I don't even know if there is yeah, I did actually look at this earlier. I don't think there is a 4-star helicopter in existence today.
Yeah, he told us yet, quote unquote.
Yes. Yeah, that is true. Hint, I guess. So yeah. Obviously on the car side, you have a bunch of options. Trucks, we already discussed. It's going to be interesting to see which guys end up under here. And that's why I initially leaned into, they're just stat blocks. And I have lots of stat blocks. And then they become one big stat block. That being said, I think I'm going to go out on a limb and assume you feel these guys are more on the blue end.
Yeah.
Like
3 defense and 0 attack, I would say, yes.
Mm. I mean, by the same token, you do have to win the game at some point, and to do that, you're probably going to need to combine, so if they're blue, they're sturdier, and your opponent has to kill somebody at some point if they're trying to win the game, but you do have to push some damage on your own.
Mm-hmm. Pierce exists.
Yes, but, for example, bigger they are on the... it might not go off on the 8-star guys. Like, it could get weird. And B, If you start at 0 attack, like, okay, you got 2 attack, Pierce 4. Have fun.
I'll make it work.
It'll happen. So let's move on to the combined mode for him. So Tidal Wave Dark Fleet is a 7/21/2. He is 24 stars. And when this is combined, tap an enemy. Now, this was the part that I've had a visible reaction when we were talking to Drew, because there just aren't that many ways to tap your opponent's characters in this game. So it's a very unique effect, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that whether you're orange or you're blue, this is going to come into play a lot, because I guess your opponent could mess with your combo, your combine ability by sending out the guy you would most likely want to tap ahead of time. But, okay, then they're doing your work for you. I don't know. This seems like a really impressive ability. Do you feel the same way, Scott?
It depends on which side you're on. It's more impressive if you're on the orange side, because you get to the character you're trying to actually KO more efficiently. But then again, if you're forcing them to attack you, and I'm assuming that you can't. Let's assume. I mean, this is not a very difficult thing to do. I mean, like, you have like an 053 and an 162 or something like that. Like, one of those guys or both the Micromasters have to get KO'd. And remember, you can do things like one shall stand your own Micromasters and things like that too. Like, because
of course
they just have to be KO'd. Period. Like, not by your opponent.
Yep.
So you can. I guess then either way, like, you have more control over the combination, unlike, Omega Supreme and like, I guess Skytread is kind of like you have to work to have control over that, but you seem to have more control over this because it's just easier to KO.
Yeah.
Like,
well, the bar is definitely lower for what you have to do. So
tapping a guy in a blue deck, essentially, if we are assuming you're trading blows back and forth with like their giant character and now your giant character, you're getting an extra attack because you're preventing them from attacking at some point. And if you're not, like, they basically just overkilled one of these other guys. So, like, you're basically ahead no matter how you slice it. And in orange deck, you're actually able to get to the guy you want to attack and then probably put a hurting on them, again, without them being able to attack you back. So I believe this is essentially as close to a free turn type thing that we're going to get. Not to mention that Peace or Tyranny is also insane with this team.
If you didn't say it, I was going to. That's one of the many reasons why I initially lunged at the orange side of it.
I think it's just blue with Peace or Tyranny.
Well, that was also another point, is that, you could just play. It sounds weird, but PTT and blue decks maybe is a thing now.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of ways to abuse this. I think the tap ability is very powerful. The only thing I wish is that he had some kind of like built-in Pierce or Bold, because 7 is decent, but it's not. It's
not over the top.
It's not like huge.
I'm curious. Is this? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, obviously, Energon Axe is going to immediately attach to him, or Scoundrel's Blaster, or or anyone, or
right.
Obviously, your typical grenade launchers. But
yeah, I'm curious if this is especially given the low attack values of the pre-combined parts, is this another one that goes in the category of those orange-black decks or blue-black decks where you try and leverage that to continue pushing down or do something early on, and then even against orange stuff, opposing orange stuff, I mean, you could steal an attack to keep your guy alive a little bit longer. You're going to be big enough at 7 to be able to push significant damage, and against blue decks, you'd have black pips or other pierce effects to try and get there. Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah, I think this is actually opposite of the other cards we've been talking about, like or Cosmos. Like, I don't think you can just go all in on this ability. I think you obviously play cards that supplement the ability.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think you said, you actually have to do damage, and this, unlike those other two decks, there isn't an auto KO situation like there is with those guys. So you are going to have to work after the fact, but I don't think it's. I think you like I said, you are ahead in the race to begin with. So we'll see how it goes from there.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this guy. It's definitely, as you said, it's a unique and you have significantly more control over how your combination happens, and it's much quicker than most.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I was just floored when I saw just tap an enemy. I'm very excited about trying that out and seeing what the implications are because, I mean, let's face it, tackle was not setting the world on fire up to this point.
No, I mean, you can literally do this on turn one. Like, you just basically, you can PTT a guy, and then you take your extra turn, and then on your extra turn, you just one shall stand one of the Micromasters and kill him, and then now you have this combined form and another Micromaster. Then the Micromaster swings in, and then your guy's protected from their presumably like second or third attacker, and then you just start. Then the game just begins from there. So
you could, yes. I don't know if you'd necessarily want to do that on turn one against a lot of sides.
You could, though.
Yeah, it is possible. It is in your bag of tricks. It's definitely. I'm really excited to actually start messing around with this guy because the play pattern as a whole is just so unique compared to what we've had before on multiple different fronts that it's lending another axis for us to try and examine. I mean, yes, ultimately it's still going to come down to, do my guys punch better than your guys? But I get to mess with who gets to punch when a lot more. So
yeah, there's a lot of free turns going on, much like the Titan Masters.
Absolutely. So any other thoughts for Tidal Wave before we move on, Scott?
Nope, it's cool.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited about this guy. So let's talk about some headmasters. So first one up is Arcana, who very much looks like Brainstorm, which I saw a couple people on Twitter that it's a very, very deep cut that I'll admit I didn't recognize. So somebody will have to explain that one to me. Arcana provides +2 defense in head mode for 4 stars, and then in bot mode, he's melee and a 4/2/2. What are your initial thoughts on this guy, Scott?
I'd rather have the tough one.
I like this. Well, I get it in blue stuff. And I did not sit down to do the math yet, but I could foresee this guy being better in an orange deck. I mean, you have 4 attack. Presumably in an orange deck, the bot mode is just going to croak as soon as something looks at it funny. But the +2 defense on, arbitrary headmaster or on arbitrary body rather, that already has, say, 2 defense, maybe that means they soak an extra attack. Maybe.
I think you'd rather just use an off at that point.
Well, if there's I agree. So, like, the next guy we're going to talk about is probably going to be the one you're going to reach for first. But if there's a team that has multiple, so if we've already seen, or we will see, Twin Twist and Cup as wreckers, if there's another wrecker who's a lower star count, maybe this is the other head for the other guy, possibly. Given that we're going to have so many, I would assume that we're going to have not just bold ones as the aggressive heads. There'll probably be other ones.
Yeah, I would assume so.
So I'm holding out hope for this guy, but I agree in a lot of scenarios, unless gyros are suddenly everywhere, like the tough 3 is probably going to net you more in most cases.
I mean, the tough 3 can net you double this if your
right.
deck is built correctly. So, and then that guy can actually, that guy can likely block, whereas this guy is going to be tough. Well,
I mean, he gets in front just once.
Yes.
Once.
That guy gets to run it. That guy gets to run it.
Yes.
And then this one, it's gonna be hard. But
yeah, he had. Like I said, I'm curious if this would be the tide turner, or it would allow you to break serve or something in an aggro deck. But otherwise, I'm generally in agreement with you about what we saw from Flintlock.
I have to see where the other ones are costed. Like, I believe this at 3 stars would probably have been fine. Because given the fact that the tough 3 by nature should just be better.
It's going to depend on not necessarily the other head's cost, but also the other body's cost, because there may be one that's, okay, if this guy with 3 stars is now ridiculous for some reason.
That's fair.
So that the whole modularity component of this makes it like there's so many combinations that it's going to get weird very quickly.
Yeah, until we see more, I just think that there's already ones that are superior. So
Right.
but I mean, Smashdown isn't as good as Fire Drive and Lionizers, so and Aimless. So what do you expect? So
Oh yeah, not everybody is going to be the top of their class, Scott. Somebody
Yep.
has to be number one. So we'll move on from Arcana to Flameout, who is the Bolt 2 head. Now he's only 3 stars, and he's a 2/2/1 melee character in bot mode with Bolt 2. We have our aggressive counterpart to Flintlock, I guess.
Probably, but I would assume there's probably 4-star aggressive heads as well. But,
Oh yeah, we have options from 1 to 4. Is that? Am I remembering correctly? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I said it, and then I'm like, wait a minute, was that right? So there's clearly going to be other scales on this, given, like I was saying earlier, that it has to be succinct for what ability is showing on the top of the head mode. I'm curious if it's just going to be scaling, like the 2-star version of this will be Bold 1, or 1 star will be Bold 1, and then there'll be a Bold 3 at 4, or something like that. Or is it going to get wilder?
Probably. I think there's other abilities that are going to be. I would assume there's a plethora of keywords, so I assume any of them.
Well, yeah, there are a lot of keywords, so there's definitely an option. Clearly, I mean, I don't know what else to say about this guy, but starting with a flamethrower in play, we've already seen it on as early as Barrage in Wave 1, where getting free weapons is pretty good.
Yeah, I think this one is a better counterpart to Cup than Flintlock is, to be honest with you.
I'd agree with that, yeah. It leans more into... It's interesting that Cup has that built-in tough one, but he has that other clearly aggressive ability, and this only augments that.
Yeah, and this guy's not going to be surviving any hits at all. Like, he obviously...
No.
The head.
But similar to what we've seen with the Tailwind builds or other patrols or whatever, these little guys can pack a punch, especially from an orange deck. And, okay, there's always the grenade launcher, reckless charge, get in there. Mm-hmm. And suddenly this guy's 10 with Bolt 2. It's like, all right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could get messy for your opponent very quickly, punching with this guy. So I'm not at all intimidated. It's just going to be a matter of if you do something like One Shall Stand your guy to pop him off for some reason, he may not make it through your opponent's turn.
No, agreed. And I don't know that that's what the play... I don't think you would want to do that because
it was the first thing that came to mind, but I don't know why you would do that. So it was just,
I think unlike the Battle Master, I think you're not going to want to do that with these guys as much as possible, because I think the character you're getting is not supplementing another character. They are a smaller character on their own. So
absolutely, yeah. It's I like this guy. That's about all I can say about him.
Mm-hmm. Solid.
Some of these reviews may go quicker now that I'm thinking about it, simply because it's like, oh, well, he has one line of text. All right, he's good. Nah, he's crap. All right, move on. So to close it out, we have Twin Twist, who's the more recent body that was revealed. He is 9 stars. He is a drill tank. So he's a tank, a wrecker, and melee. He's 4/12/2 in alt mode. And when you flip to alt mode, he gets Pierce 3 until end of turn. On the bot mode, he's a wrecker and melee, 5/12/2, and when you flip to this mode, your opponent chooses one of their characters and does 1 damage to it. If you flip this character at least 2 times this turn, instead deal 1 to each enemy, so your showing offs are now strafing runs.
But your hunker downs are not.
Correct, which we did, that was confirmed that it's not, body is not bot mode.
Right.
Which definitely puts a damper on, well, this guy specifically, and presumably future bodies as well. There are some costs and benefits to that where you dodge marksmanships, but you can't hunker down, so you're stuck with showing off. I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that we're going to see a showing off for bodies, or a showing off that some some kind of effect like that interacts with specifically body characters.
Yeah, I would assume so.
It only makes sense given the way this guy is worded, because otherwise it's like, okay, showing off and rapid conversion, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Given that we can't hunker down, given the higher star cost to stat ratio, I wasn't super thrilled by this guy, even though I do love drill tanks because they're hilarious. Do you like this guy at all, Scott?
I think his ability, even without the strafing run, is still powerful. I mean, Octone has shown us that like even when your opponent gets to choose where the damage goes, it still adds up over time. So I think that ability is being kind of undervalued, especially when it's a flip to body mode ability.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that the correct head exists yet for us to evaluate this guy.
I can agree with that
because he has a very high star cost as a body, so I don't really understand. Like, I would assume like one of the very small heads would be a way. His flip to alt mode ability makes him want to be a blue deck because you will get Pierce.
Right.
But I don't really understand where this guy fits right now. So I think we need to see. I need to understand more Titan Master support and body support because as it stands right now, like I just think Cup is clearly superior to this guy for less cost. I don't think that the increased stats really justify the increased cost. That's why he has an increased cost, but I don't think it's quote worth it as it stands right now. So,
I feel like this guy wants a head that is. It can't be 4 stars for this, but you probably want a head that gives like Pierce 3 for some number of stars, and then you can load them up with a weapon, so you can flip, get back, and it's like, all right, I'm getting in for 6.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Period, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know, like I don't know where that would cost star wise though. That sort of head, and that's the problem is that, like if this guy was 12 stars, is that worth it? I don't know. Because that's a pretty heavy investment for a character that at the end of the day still only has 12 health. Like in recent times, like that's nothing.
That doesn't concern me because the head's going to pop. That is part. So that part isn't my concern. My concern is I think that's a good call. I think there will probably be a head that gives you Pierce, and I think that is where
I'm sure there will be. I mean, we've seen every other like the standard keyword, so I'm sure that's going to be on there somewhere.
No, that's a good call. Like even if it's like Pierce 2, then like you just throw a Noble's Blaster on him, even against Decepticon, even against like Autobot, he's still going to be because in alt mode
6 Pierce 7.
Well, in alt mode he's a 4, right?
Yeah, he's 4 with Pierce 3.
Right. So if you got a head that had if you had a head that had like Pierce 2 or Pierce 3, you could be 6 Pierce 5, 6 Pierce 6, and that's like exactly where you want to be, obviously. So
yeah,
out of a blue deck, I can't stand the fact that he's melee. I'm out of a blue deck, but
you can't have everything. That would actually be really cool because we, if we saw also, and I know this is getting away from the card in question, but if we saw heads that actually granted other traits, so like the head gave this guy ranged. I don't know if that's enough, even for like 1 star, but maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if there's a Pierce head, that's where this guy will come into play. Because I think starting like basically flipping to get Pierce 3 and then getting it on top power. As long as that head costs like 2 or 3, I think that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, and then like you were saying earlier, the 1 damage does add up. I mean, it's going to depend on what the remainder of the team is as well, because, again, flip density of just. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, in the Octone decks, it was okay. Well, I'm only flipping Octone, but he's also an 8/17 too. Well, he'll be an 8 when I get in the mode I want to. In this, it's just a little less impressive, I have to say.
Agreed.
But still, so that's actually all of the reveals from this week. Like we started out with, it seems like we're going at a much more manageable, leisurely pace as we go through the reveal season. It definitely felt like we were at certain points we were trying to drink from a fire hose last season.
Yeah, the content creator reveal. So
The content creator reveals what? You cut off a little bit.
Have not even been sent out yet. So there's not even that many. Like all the ones that are coming through now are from the official membership.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and we've seen in the past where people that are more, I guess, more prominent Transformer fans rather than directly TCG related content creators definitely have had a tendency to just get it out there immediately. Like, or it seemed like it. It was just like, bang, okay, they got a card, they put it on Twitter or whatever. So, I assume those haven't gone out either. Otherwise, we probably would have seen those by now.
Yeah, agreed.
But anyway, any other closing thoughts on probably our quickest show yet?
Of all time?
Yeah, probably.
No, I mean, the set continues to shape up. There's obviously a lot of cards in this batch that are waiting on us to understand what's in the set.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that the Bold 2 head is probably just, it's probably very interesting, and I do think that the stratagems continue to do exactly what I think they should do. They take a character that has multiple problems and addresses at least one of them in a major way, and I think that's positive for deck building. So,
although as Drew had pointed out, a lot of them, like I guess it's not technically a strict upgrade on Cosmos, but it essentially is. And the Volcanicus one is leaning towards that, but the way he made it sounds, a lot of them are going to be much more strategic decisions as we move forward. So I'm very curious as to what other characters get them and how they're going to twist the gameplay.
Yeah, I would assume that for most of them, like ones we haven't seen yet, just because there's so many of them left, 27 of them.
Right.
The way I've kind of described it in other places is it creates a whole new character. It's not just like give this character Bold 1 or something like something normal. Or like, what you said with Cosmos, like make him playable or something like that. Like, it's
I laugh, but yeah. Yeah.
Or in this situation, make him playable. Like, it should be more, like you said, like it basically creates an entirely new character. And that I'm hoping we see some, but I do believe that will require lesser, like middling star cost characters to begin with, and I'm not sure them can really get a serious boost. Like I think, like you said, like the biggest one I can think of would be, like you said, like change Wheeljack's tough to Bull or something like that.
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, I mean that example, we keep coming back to it because it's just a very easy way to illustrate the way some of these things could go.
I mean, Bold to tough.
Yeah, it's. That's actually a really good way to put it, that the goal is to create effectively new characters, which is kind of a sneaky way for them to grow the character allotment for the set. You know what I mean? They're not character cards, but essentially they're character cards. That's actually a really cool way to look at it.
Yeah, I think this set will take the longest to digest of any set so far. I mean, as exciting as that was for sets, I do believe on the surface they were still kind of.
Well, they happen on an axis that we were familiar with. This is almost going back to Wave 2, where we don't really have any idea how combiners are going to work. Like, is it like completely? There's no chance they'll ever combine, or is it going to be awesome? And we obviously found some that worked and some didn't, and I think we're going to run into that same boat with a lot of these cards, where they're definitely turning things on its head.
No pun intended.
Yep. We got a lot of those in it today.
Yep.
But, all right. I think that does it. We won't do what we usually do and go, all right, we're done. And then 10 more minutes, 15 times. No. So for Scott and myself, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for watching. And please tune in next time for more Tech Talk.